coming through when the growth look good on you. Best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep fitting in love.
Yes, my people's G, and we are back in the building today, guys. Please make sure you are liking, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. We hit our target of 150 subscribers, I believe that was yesterday, so thank you to each and every one of you who has obviously subscribed to the channel already. Our next target is now to hit 200 subscribers, so hopefully we can get to that as soon as possible. So today, as you guys can see in the title of the video, it is the attacking evolution. So obviously, you know, we've had Liverpool's poor performances this season. You know, one of the main issue of that has obviously been, you know, the midfield and things like that. But something that Jurgen Klopp mentioned the other day, and something that I've been thinking about, especially in the last few weeks, more so ever since we come back from the World Cup, but you know, it was something that was lingering in the back of my mind, you know, pre the World Cup, which was the attack. Now, obviously, this season, you know, Liverpool have still been scoring goals. We're one of the highest scorers in the Premier League. So, you know, when it comes to the actual scoring of goals, you know, I've never thought that was an issue. You know, Salah, Firmino, Darwin Nunez, you know, they've all contributed to Liverpool's goals this season, you know, and we haven't really found a problem. We haven't found a problem, would I say, in scoring goals. I think one of the main things I'm seeing is that it's more the creation behind it in games. I think some of the stats I believe would be skewed purely off the, you know, the 9-0, you know, victory over Bournemouth, or the, you know, the win against Rangers and things like that, you know, those really, really high scoring games. But when I'm watching Liverpool, I just feel that we don't even look like we're really, and like I said, the stats will probably show that we're creating, you know, some chances and things like that. I'm not saying that we don't create at all, but it just doesn't look like we create that much in games. I feel like we do get stifled quite a lot, but nonetheless, doesn't really matter, because scoring goals really hasn't been, you know, our issue. It's obviously been on the defensive side of things. So with that being said, I look at the attack that, you know, one, the attack that we've signed, and two, the attack that we've obviously currently got, obviously because of the injuries and things like that. So obviously we've got Darwin Nunez, Firmino before his injury, and Salah. That was kind of like the three that Jurgen Klopp was, you know, going with, pushing Nunez out to that left-hand side to allow Roberto Firmino to play in his position, and then obviously Salah out on that right-hand side. And, you know, we had Luis Diaz out there on the left before, Diogo Jota sometimes on that left, and obviously playing through the middle. No one really on the right-hand side. Something that I have continuously complained about, you know, in regards to that, because I feel that we really do need someone who is quite similar to what Salah used to be on that right-hand side. Obviously, Ben Doka's come in, and, you know, he's a youngster, 16, 17, and, you know, he showed flashes. You know, he's not really, obviously he's not ready for this level. So I do believe we do need someone in that area, to kind of allow Ben Doak to just kind of continue developing, you know, the way he needs to. I guess Klopp looks at it and thinks that Salah never gets injured. So if he doesn't get injured, he never really needs to come off, so to speak. So then Ben Doak can just kind of come on for his, you know, sub appearances and things like that, which I understand to a degree. But like I say, you know, God forbid Salah gets an injury, you know, that's when I'm looking. And it always seems to be the case with Liverpool, that we always wait for the situation to get really, really bad, and then we're like, oh my goodness, maybe we should sign a right winger, you know, because we can't rely on Ben Doak. And even if we did rely on Ben Doak, he'd be the only one, so we'd still be in the same position. So, you know, I like to have three kind of players kind of in position sometimes. You know, you've got your starter, you've got your sub rotation player, and then you've got your youngster, the guy who, you know, can come in every now and again, or the guy that you're looking at towards the future for, you know, just in case the starter does get injured, you have to play, you know, your rotation player. Then you've got that you know, that young player who can come off the bench, you know, for a few minutes here and there, like Ben Doak, like Bajcetic, you know, have shown this season. But obviously we look at Liverpool's attack, obviously the old school attack. You could probably see in the thumbnail, we had Roberto Firmino, Mane and Salah. You know, that attack really does epitomize, you know, the Jurgen Klopp era. You know, they were, that was the system, to be honest with you, that in my personal opinion. Obviously other parts were the components, but I feel like those three were the system. And one player in particular who I felt epitomized that the most would be Roberto Firmino. You know, he was the link man between that midfield and the attack. You know, we know what our midfield was like back in the day, with Gini Wijnaldum, Jordan Henderson and Fabinho. You know, it was quite industrial, quite press resistant. It was almost like, I used to call them rats. I used to call them rats. Like, they were just constantly in your face, you know, that they wouldn't leave you alone. They were just always at your neck, you know, consistently, always at your neck. And you never had a moment to breathe, you know, with that midfield, which was obviously fantastic. But the attack, you know, the attack was the area that started everything. You know, that would, as Jurgen Klopp mentioned, I think in his interview press conference that he done recently, you know, you gotta defend really from the front. If the attack doesn't defend and if the attack doesn't press, inevitably it's gonna leave problems in that midfield, which is what we're seeing. You know, we've got Darwin Nunez, who isn't like, obviously he's been pushed out to the left. Whether he plays up front, you know, in the future, I don't know. We've got Cody Gakpo now, so I don't know what Klopp sees in his positioning, because I feel that he has performed pretty decently on that left-hand side, but he maybe sees his future up front. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But obviously with Darwin Nunez out on that left-hand side, the team doesn't really press that much from that side. Defensively, he's not very sound. He can get back, and he has shown that he can get back every now and again, but that's not really his game. Maybe he still needs to get in tune with it. Maybe he still needs time, but I do believe that, you know, the type of player that he is, that's not what he's trying to do. He's trying to affect the game the other way, which is absolutely fine. If that's your game, that's your game. You know, we just have to try and figure out a way that how we can implement that. Hence the reason why maybe I do think he would have to play up front at some point in time, because defensively, you know, he leaves us kind of vulnerable on that side. But again, going the other way, that's where you want him. Cody Gakpo's the same. When I was reading like some of his stats, you know, prior to him coming to Liverpool, I could see in defensive transitions, he's a bit like Nunez in that sense, where defensively they're not really sound, you know, so to speak. And then obviously you've got Diogo Jota. Now, Diogo Jota is probably the most similar one to Roberto Firmino, I would say, that we've currently got, you know, in the team. He's someone who presses, you know, someone who harasses, you know, he's always trying to win the ball in the attacking third, you know, and then obviously do what he needs to do, you know, thereafter. I think we saw a goal like that this season before his injury, where, you know, he was pressing, win the ball in the attacking third. And I think he was able to release Salah, I believe. I can't remember which game that was, but I think he was able to release Salah, and then Salah went on to score. And that is kind of, you know, what Diogo Jota is about. Maybe Klopp is trying to mold him into that position. But I think some of the main problems that we are seeing this season is obviously the midfield. That we're not going to shy away from that. We're not, you know, naive to think that, you know, the midfield still doesn't need work and it doesn't need players, you know, in that position. We need fresh legs in that midfield. But we also need to figure out a way, or Klopp, should I say we, but Klopp needs to figure out a way in which he can get that attack to function the way that it used to function. Because you've got, you know, we've kind of evolved, you know, our attack over this last 12 months, to be honest. You know, brought in Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez and then Cody Gakpo, you know, in January, who I feel are all quite different to Mane, Salah and Firmino. First of all, none of them can play on that right-hand side. I mean, you can plot anybody on a right-hand side, but is that their real positioning? No, I don't believe so. I don't think any of them are effective at all on that right-hand side. And I think actually they couldn't even play there anyway, because Cody Gakpo, Darwin Nunez and Diogo Jota maybe, but Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez, they like to cut in. Luis Diaz likes to cut in. If you don't get Luis Diaz cutting in, you've literally taken away his entire game, meaning he then becomes ineffective because he loves to cut in, and that's his kind of game. Diogo Jota maybe more just because of his skill set and because he's a player who is quite versatile. But again, I just don't really see it that is his position. You know, I prefer to just keep him up front, you know, as more of a rotation striker with potentially with Nunez. So, you know, when you've got, you know, such a different type of front three, and this goes back again to like the profile of players that we are signing, you know, for the future. I then have to wonder, because when you've got someone like a Darwin Nunez, his kind of game is he's someone who's quite quick. He can get in behind the defense with his pace. And yeah, he causes chaos. He causes chaos in that kind of nature. Diogo Jota probably would have, obviously he's injured now, but he is probably the only one I can think of who you'd have to play, because depending on how Klopp wants the team to play, and again, this is where we are all confused, because we at the moment, I'm not seeing any levels of, you know, I'm not seeing anything different about the team in terms of how we're playing, but we don't have the players to do so. We have got a lot of technical players, but for some reason we're still trying to play this high intensity, you know, high line kind of game, you know, just like we did, you know, previously, which would be fine if we had the players to do so. But that then entails your attack to be on it from the minute one. So if your attack are not really putting in that same output as the previous attack, you're going to have to change it around. You know, the high line will inevitably have to drop at some point in time, unless you get the attack to start doing what it is you need them to do. Even the fact that you've got Salah in there, Salah's game has completely changed. You know, Salah isn't playing how he used to. Salah isn't someone, he does it occasionally, when he can. We saw the goal against Manchester City, but he's not really, you know, we had Mane and Salah, who when Firmino would drop, it's almost like we were playing with two strikers, with Firmino actually just playing in behind them and obviously joining in whenever he can. Because yes, they would start out wide and then obviously come in, but then there were times when because Trent and Robbo were so high up, they were almost playing as left and right midfield. Because they were playing as like a left and right midfield, you then almost had five in your midfield, with obviously your two centre backs. Obviously with Fabinho potentially then dropping in to form a 3, which is something that I feel that we should be looking at, you know, potentially doing a bit like what Manchester City do with Rodri, because then they start off with a 3, Rodri slots back in to centre back, they then got a 4, so then it leads them a bit more, having a lot more stability in that back line, you know, when the opposition is trying to attack. But we seem to have this kind of, we're trying, at the beginning of the season, Salah was trying to keep his width, and then Diaz was trying to keep the width. And obviously, because they're then trying to keep the width, if they're not both pressing how they should be pressing, you know, trying to press the fullbacks and things like that, it leaves gaps. And that's all that's happening with the midfield. Like, when you watch the game, you're seeing it. We're so easy to play against. It's not like the teams are playing these, you know, Iniesta passes or, you know, Iniesta through balls and things. You're thinking, bloody hell, yeah, you know, you couldn't even stop that even if you tried. You know, these are simple passages of play, and sometimes it's not even a passage of play. It's just purely one pass. Is just, you know, we saw the goal against Leicester, Dewsbury Hall. You know, it was just one ball right through. Midfield were just all over the gaff, but that starts from the front. And that's not to get onto the attack, because the attack are totally different than a Mane, Salah and Firmino. But Firmino was like the plug. He was the glue, you know, to that attack, you know, because he was the link man between the midfield and the attack. And he would then get back and help out defensively in the midfield if we ever needed him to, especially in certain games where we might be just getting a little bit overrun in that midfield area and the teams are starting to get in behind us. He would then drop back in, but then still have the IQ to then know, okay, I still need to help out the attack. But obviously, you know, all three, Salah, Mane and Firmino, they knew each other's game. They understood each other's game, having played with each other for so long. Hence the reason why you saw, as the seasons went on, it just kind of got better and better. So obviously it might just take a bit of time. but they all knew what to do in every situation. You know, if Salah's pressing, it's Salah and Firmino. Again, like I said, Firmino being the plug. If Mane's pressing, it's Mane and Firmino. Firmino might just drop a little bit. Again, he drops into that number 10 position very, very well. Hence the reason why I think a Diogo Jota might be the closest that we can potentially get with that. But then what needs to happen is either Klopp needs to speak with Cody Gakpo, with Luis Diaz, Darwin Nunez, and Ben Dope. You know, you might as well speak to him as well. He needs to speak to all four of those, all of these guys, and say to them, look, when we are trying to, when the opposition has got the ball, I need you guys to press the hell out of these guys, and I need you to press like your life kind of depended on it, because that's what the previous attack was doing. Again, I'm saying this if Klopp wants to continue playing the same way with these players. If he wants to play a different way, then obviously it might happen a bit differently. Then you can still keep that high line, because at least then if you've got Darwin Nunez and say, I don't know, Firmino or Diogo Jota, for example, if you've got Darwin Nunez and Diogo Jota both pressing, you know, at least then you give yourself the chance that, one, they might win the ball back. But even if they don't win the ball back, because we are so high, the midfield doesn't have that such a distance to try and make up, to try and also help to win that ball back as well. And even if we still can't win that ball back, again, the distances between then the defense and the midfield isn't then going to leave such a massive gap. What's happening now is it's kind of this half press that we're doing from the front. So it's now a half press. Once that kind of gets bypassed, which it does more or less 9 times out of 10, once it gets bypassed, the midfield are so far away from the attack anyway. So they're not able to get to the ball. Now we're starting to leave gaps. Once you start to leave gaps, our high line is obviously then killing us, because then teams are then finding ways in behind all the bloody time. But then sometimes what you'll then see is you might see a Matip or Konate or a Virgil, or I would say Nat Phillips, but you would see one of those, Joe Gomez, you would see one of those guys trying to step forward to try and win that ball back. Because they can see the gap, because they can see the ball, and they're thinking, shit, if we don't get that ball, obviously they're going to get in behind. Maybe if I step up a little bit and try and win the ball or try and nick it, we can then, you know, be on the attack. Problem is, teams are just bypassing that constantly. And then we have the issues that we are obviously seeing this season. So, you know, I'm looking at the attack, and again, we don't know what, because this attack's quite young. Which again, the age profile is a bit different, other than maybe Diaz. I can't remember how old Diogo Jota is, but you know, when we're looking at that kind of profile, Darwin Nunez, Cody Gakpo, when we're looking at those two kind of players in comparison to the profile that, you know, Jurgen Klopp had, you know, before, again, these guys were 25, 26, you know, moving on, you know, they were in that stage of their footballing careers where they were quite experienced already at the game. It's then just obviously about learning new style, or, you know, learning whatever the manager is trying to implement, but they have the experience to also use some of their own game to then, you know, put together with what Jurgen Klopp wants the team to do. These guys are still quite young. These guys are still, you know, still kind of coming up, you know, 22, 23 years old. So of course they're still trying to develop their own kind of sense of style, as well as then trying to implement what Jurgen Klopp is seemingly trying to do. But I do feel that defending from the front is very, very key. And I think that we need to improve that part of the game, as obviously, as well as getting a midfield, of course, that we can't shy away from that. And I'm not going to shy away from that, but I am starting to see that the attack isn't really defending the way that our previous attack was. And I feel that that is also killing us, you know, in that midfield area, which is then killing us in the defense. Hence the reason why Alisson is making more saves and, you know, things like that. Again, it's a domino effect. It's not just because, you know, I think the lazy thing to say is, oh, it's just a midfield. Once we saw, and this is why I started to think a little bit deeper and started to think to myself, yeah, it couldn't just be the notion that once we get a new midfield, it just works. That wouldn't even make, you know, any kind of sense. And the reason why I say that is because he's tried so many different midfielders in there. Whether we think they're good, they're rubbish, or whatever, that part's actually irrelevant. It's the sheer fact that he's tried so many different midfielders in there, and the team still looks the exact same. You're not even really seeing a change. Even you'd expect to see a change if, you know, you put different midfielders, you know, within your team, regardless, whatever that change would be, you just expect to see something a little bit different. But the same vulnerabilities are still there, regardless of the type of midfielders he's putting there. Whether it's a Thiago, whether he goes technical with like a Thiago, Jones, Elliott, kind of thing, maybe potentially slotting Carvalho in there, or whether he tries to go industrial with like a Hendo, Milner, Fabinho, you know, whatever's happening, regardless, it still looks vulnerable. So then you've got to start thinking, so what would the difference be? Like, yes, the team needs legs in there. Of course, that will help, you know, massively, but I don't see I said, no, it will help. Let me not even say massively. It will help inevitably. I don't think we're going to see a massive improvement in the midfield just if we get a pair of legs in there. I don't see how that would work if the attack is still doing the same thing. Again, defending starts from the front. Once the attack starts doing their job and their role, then we will then see the benefits of having the right midfield in there. I still think we'll still have the same vulnerabilities. We'll still be giving away chances left, right and centre, because at the end of the day, you can't expect a Jude Bellingham or Caicedo to make up the yards all the time if the attack are not doing their job, because they're having to do two positions. They're having to almost do the attacking press and then also the midfield press. When do they, you know, how can you do both of those? How can you do both of those things and then still be able to get back and help out, you know, when you need to help out and, you know, try and get up, you know, you'll get exhausted. And you do kind of see it at times when the midfield is able to do the attackers' jobs. What happens in games now? We are just getting tired after 55 minutes, 60 minutes, 10 minutes after halftime. You can see it. The team's intensity is just down, completely down, because they're so tired. Because yes, they might do it for the first part of the game or maybe even for a half. They're able to almost, you know, do the role of the attacker and the midfielders. Yes, that's not a problem. You can't do that for 90 minutes though. You know, that I'm not going to say it's impossible. There's probably players out there who can, but you know, it's very, very hard to do. And it's hard to continuously keep doing that. You know, hence the reason why I feel that Klopp needs to figure out a way. You've got this new attack now. You know, we've spent over 100 million, you know, on this attack in 12 months. You know, so again, this goes out to the people who complain about the money side of things. We spent 100 million over 100 million on attackers. And I feel that, like I said, because the defending starts from the front, this is why my brain is starting to think Klopp doesn't see the issues that we see in midfield, because there might not even, there is an issue in midfield, but there maybe isn't that crazy need of midfielders, so to speak, if he can get that attack right. Obviously, it doesn't help. Diogo Jota's injured. Luis Diaz is injured. So obviously that's not going to help things, because they might be the starting players that he wanted, you know, in those positions, especially Diaz. I feel like he would put Luis Diaz as the starting left winger more times than most, and then maybe he wants Diogo Jota and Darwin Nunez to go up front. So of course, you know, the injuries may, you know, haven't necessarily helped, but the style of play should always still remain the same regardless of who's in there, and whoever then comes in to replace those players then needs to still opt and still buy into what the original players are trying to do. If they still can't do that, then we're going to start having problems. And this is where the tactics, this is where understanding the players that you have and the style of play and the tactics that you want to implement in games then comes into it. And this is why we look at Klopp. This is why Klopp is under pressure a little bit. This is why people say that he's tactically inept, myself included, because you're clearly not seeing that what you need to realistically do, you're not necessarily doing it. This is why I say it. I don't think it's just as easy as, we get Caicedo and Jude Bellingham as an example, and all of a sudden Liverpool are just going to be playing exactly how it was. I don't think that's going to happen at all, until you get that attack right. Once you get that attack right and get their jobs and their roles, then we can see the benefits of a Jude Bellingham, of a Caicedo, of an Enzo Fernandez, or Amrabat, whoever we buy, whoever we sign, whoever we're linked with. That's when I feel that you'll start seeing the benefits, kind of thing. And again, this isn't to place everything on the attack. I don't want people to think like, oh yeah, but midfield, you're forgetting. No. Klopp was right in the sense of what he was saying in his press conference. Hence the reason why I went back, watched it again, and just kind of did my own research into what the team is doing or what they previously, used to do. At the end of the day, it is the team. It's not just one position that is going to be a problem. At the end of this, it's not like a goalkeeper where you've only got one of those, and if you haven't got your main goalkeeper and the second goalkeeper is like really shit, obviously Keller is not, but the second goalkeeper is like really crap, and all these kind of things, then okay, you can look at that area and be like, you know what, that is an area that we might need to improve upon, etc., etc. We're talking about 3 players for these positions, 3 players in the midfield positions as well. So that's 6 players that you're trying to figure out. If they do their job right, we won't see Virgil getting exposed. We won't see Konate getting exposed, or Matip, or Joe Gomez, or Trent, or Robbo. Like, we won't see these guys. And hence the reason why before they weren't getting exposed. Salah was pressing. Salah might not do he does it at times, but he might not always do the defensive work on the way back. But what he was really good at was pressing with the front 3, or the other 2, Firmino and Mane. They were really good. They just knew each other's game. They knew when to press. They knew when to hold back. They knew when to get in certain positions. Jerry mentioned it on the show yesterday. How many times did we see Sadio Mane winning the ball from the goalkeeper? Because it's that press. That press. He knew that if I go, Firmino's either going to drop into my position, or I know that Robbo's behind me, and he's then going to be able to press that right back. Because if he presses that right back, the left central midfielder can then press the opposition's right winger or right midfielder, whoever's on that right hand side ahead of the right back. So it was all working in tandem. Like I said, you've got new players in there now, and it's about understanding their roles and understanding what they can do and what they need to also be doing as well. So Jota Gakpo coming in, Luis Diaz when he gets back, Diogo Jota, Darwin Nunez, all of these guys, they need to buy into that, because I feel that once they buy into that properly, and once they're able to do that properly, Liverpool, you'll start to see, Liverpool improve. And then I believe you'll start to see a better team. And most importantly, you'll start to see better performances. Sadio Mane starting to decline. Mo Salah starting to decline. Firmino starting to decline. What have we seen from all of 3 of these players recently? Mo Salah, back, to be honest, that 2022, a poor year by his standards in terms of his performances. Don't let the stats fool you. He's my guy as well. I love Mo Salah. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite player, in this current Liverpool side. But even I can recognize the difference between Mo Salah now than the Mo Salah who first came here. And the Mo Salah that we're seeing, especially in 2022, performance-wise, for me, no. Ever since he went off to AFCON, literally all the way through, poor performances. As an overall, yes, he's had games here and there, and yes, he's got the stats, and all you stat merchants out there, of course, you're going to look at that and think, oh, but he's got this amount of goals and assists. Forget that. Don't worry about all of that. Do you know what I mean? Because you need to start focusing on his actual performances. Sadio Mane, the first part of the 21-22 season, what do we see? Again, poor. He had an upturn in fortunes in the back end of things, but then he moved position into to up front from January onwards when we got Luis Diaz in. Firmino, that guy's been on the decline for ages. He's just had a crazy purple patch this season, but he's been a player that's kind of just been on the decline, kind of thing. But he's still so important because of what he does defensively for the team and the fact that he is that link man. So you're seeing it from those 3. You were starting to notice it a little bit. Again, this is if you're watching the performances. This is why, forget the stats. The stats are just the stats. They can be skewed, because if you win games by like high scores and stuff like that, and players get goals, the stats start getting a little bit skewed. Just watch the game with your eyes. Do the eye test first, before, and then look at the stat. That's why I always say to people, do the eye test first, because that will give you the best indication. The stats will then back up what you're seeing with your eyes, in one way or another. So, for me, it is one of them things. And this is why I say, the attacking evolution is potentially looking at a way to be able to get this attack. Again, we haven't got no problem scoring goals. I don't believe we're ever going to really have problems scoring goals, but we are conceding chances left, right and centre. So defensively, the attack has to do better. as well as the midfield, as well as the defense. Again, individual errors then come into play because they're almost trying to compensate for other players. So again, this is where everyone needs to, you know, start working in tandem. Klopp needs to look at this and start thinking to himself, I need to find a way to be defensively sound. You know, if it means that the attack become a little bit more boring in terms of maybe their goal output isn't going to be as high, but we are defensively sound, then that might just be something you have to do. You know, I don't know what that would then mean in terms of a tactic. You know, we've all got different tactics that we want to play, but the reality is we know Klopp's not going to do it, but we need to become more defensively sound because we are way too vulnerable, man. And it's just becoming boring every game, conceding a goal. I can't even remember the last clean sheet that we had. And I'm pretty sure we don't have that many clean sheets this season, which is quite weird when you think about it, because we were really good at getting clean sheets. You know, we didn't really concede that many goals, and especially chances. It was hard to really, you know, watching Liverpool a couple of seasons, you know, 2018 and 2020, for those 2 years, it was hard even, you know, getting chances against Liverpool, let alone scoring goals. Do you know what I mean? Like that was a hard thing for other teams to do. But now, you know, I saw yesterday, you know, our dual success rate, you know, we are the poorest team. You know, we're not winning our duels. And again, the midfield are compensating quite a lot. And when they don't have the legs to compensate, you're going to see stuff like our dual success rate being so low. That's just inevitable. That I probably didn't even need to see the stat to know that we probably are one of the lowest, you know, in the league, you know, purely because of the team's not really functioning as a team, in my opinion. I just feel like we've got sections. We've got the attack who do their thing. You got the midfield who are trying to do their thing. You got the defense trying to do their thing. Ali's just completely on his own and is having to just save the day, you know, constantly. We're not working as a team and as a unit at this current moment in time. And that's on Klopp. You know, that's on Klopp. It's on the players. It's on the players. But if the message and instructions that you're getting given is to just kind of go out there and do X, Y, and Z, if it's not then being implemented, there's only so long I can keep looking at the players, because if they can't do it, Klopp, you then need to change it. And if you then can't change it, you know, we go from there. But yeah, you know, today's video was just to kind of quickly just kind of look at the attack. You know, again, not to shy away from the midfield, not to forget that the midfield does need to be upgraded, but we also do need to look at this attack. We've got all of these attacking players. Are they good enough? You know, are they clinical enough? Is this the attack that, you know, you guys are going to be happy with moving forward? Is this attack going to help us in all areas? Because that's what the previous attack was doing. If not, does Klopp need to look at that and then say, maybe I need to almost isolate the attack, and then I can have the defense and midfield working more as a unit, and then the attack are just solely there for the goals. Almost a bit like a Haaland, where they're just there, just give them the ball, they can score the goals, X, Y, and Z. But, you know, I don't know. These are just all questions. These are just all things that we're trying to figure out, because Liverpool have been so poor and so vulnerable this season, which I think is more alarming than any transfer, to be honest with you. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comments, what do you guys think in regards to the attack? Do you think the attack is absolutely fine, and you know it's just the midfield area? I'm sure people don't just think it's just the midfield area. I think it is a whole team thing. And the message and instructions from Jurgen Klopp and what he's trying to implement and what he's telling these players, you know, to do. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, obviously, in the comments. Make sure that you guys are liking and subscribing to the channel. Like I said, we are on the road to 200 subscribers. Hopefully we can get there soon. And that is the end of the video. I'm G, and I am